Welcome aboard Rocket Ship, the platform with the most relevant content for competitive examinations. This is Rocket Ship IAS Lab and continuing with our series on answer writing for general studies papers of civil service main examination. We take up a question that you might come across in GS paper 3. Let us read out the question carefully. Pulses are not merely the poor man's meat. Pulse farming has benefits that go beyond a source of affordable protein. Elaborate. Suggest measures to encourage pulse production in India. The question is actually framed in a way where the first part of the question asks you a provocative question. It actually makes a provocative statement, that is, pulses are more than just the poor man's meat. Why this statement? Actually, you can understand very well that meats are considered good sources of protein, but pulses are also another another good source of protein, and considering they are affordable, they have often been called the poor man's meat. But the question requires you to talk about how their benefits go beyond just being an affordable source of protein. This is the point you have to elaborate on, and in the second part of the question, as usual, you have to suggest measures to encourage pulse production in India. We are introducing our answer with a piece of statistics that should make you actually think, that is actually of great concern to us. That is, it is estimated that more than 70% of Indians show signs of dietary protein deficiency. This has major implication for the health, development and productivity of the population. Again, this point should also be kept in mind, that if a population is undernourished, it is not likely to be as much productive as it would have been otherwise, when it were, you could say, well nourished. This has prompted calls for promoting pulse production as an affordable substitute to meat as source of protein. That is why they have been called, as we have just mentioned, the poor man's meat. But pulses are not just a replacement for meat. Their benefits stand in their own right. So how we can say that pulses are not just the poor man's meat? That is, their benefits are more than that. First, they are environment friendly. Some of you might recall that the pulses are categorized under legumes. They come under legumes, and the legumes host nitrogen fixing bacteria that rejuvenate the soil. The nitrogen fixing bacteria adds nitrogen to the soil. They are a classic dryland crop. The pulses are classic dryland crops. They are drought resistant and less irrigation intensive. These two things, that is mitigating the droughts as well as irrigation availability, are primary concerns in Indian agriculture. They are considered healthier sources of protein. They are rich in fiber. They are rich in dietary fibers. They are highly absorbable. That is, they are, you could say, well assimilated by the body, and they are a more balanced food actually. Compared to meat, they are considered more balanced, as we would discuss later. They require much less agrochemicals like fertilizers, pesticides, etc. We can actually connect these points, that they are hosting nitrogen fixing bacteria, and they're requiring much less agrochemicals like fertilizers. As you can understand that they themselves host nitrogen fixing bacteria, therefore their need of nitrogenous fertilizers would be proportionately less. Elaborating on these points, Pulses, being legumes, host nitrogen fixing bacteria. For an example, rhizobium. Highlight and underline this point and mention this bacterium, rhizobium, in their root nodules. Actually, most of the legumes, actually, not many legumes, most of the legumes host the nitrogen fixing bacteria in their root nodules. Growing pulses as part of crop cycling will rejuvenate soil which has been otherwise depleted by the practice of monocropping of cereals. Uh, we would briefly define monocropping here. Monocropping is the practice of growing one or in fact a few crops crop season after crop season. And as you can understand, when you are growing one particular crop, it would likely deplete the soil of some particular nutrient that are taken up by that crop. So it is always advisable that we should actually you could say cycle, we should diversify our crop basket. That is, we should grow different crops during different crop seasons. And one of the suggestions that is made is to grow crops as part of the crop cycling system, because the pulses would, you could say, rejuvenate the soil. They would replenish the soil with the nitrogen that has been taken up by the cereal crop. Pulses are representative dryland crops. They are examples of dryland crops. Drought resistant, and requiring much less irrigation. This has salutary effect on the farmer's pocket and financial stability. Again, these 2 points are very, very important. If they need much less irrigation, they would probably cut on the farmer's electricity bill that is often required to, you could say, artificially irrigate the soil. Moreover, as they are drought resistant, they would lead to financial stability. Otherwise, many times the crops are lost due to the drought. That won't be the case with the pulses. While pulses often lack in, this is a point, important point that you should highlight, that the pulses often lack in essential amino acids like lysine. However, they are considered healthier still as they are fiber rich, easily absorbable, and more balanced as they have nutrients like carotenoids too. So it's not that they are just sources of proteins, but they have other, you could say, other nutrients, and in fact these you could say good dietary fibers as well as nutrients like carotenoids. Pulses require much less agrochemical inputs like nitrogenous fertilizers and or pesticides, as we have discussed how, because they host nitrogen fixing bacteria, they have much less requirement of nitrogenous fertilizers. Therefore they are friendly to the soil ecosystem as they leave much less chemical residue. Moreover, this point is also pertinent. You can take this idea forward. Because they require much less agrochemical, it is highly likely they would have much less, you could say, agrochemical residue. Nowadays, this problem of agrochemical residue in the food is becoming a major concern. With the pulses, this concern is mitigated. This concern is assuaged to a great degree actually. Now, pulses benefits are well recognized. We have just established them. Therefore, we need programs dovetailed to the requirements of the pulse farmers. What are the suggestions we are making to popularize pulses? Essentially, popularize pulse production. First is the conventional way of assuring the farmer's margin through procurement at minimum support price for the public distribution system. Then comes spreading awareness about their benefits. That way, there would be, you could say, great deal of demand for the pulses, and the farmer would be encouraged to grow pulses. Convergence with other schemes. This is always an important point whenever you are attempting questions in the mains, or like any question that appears in UPSC papers. You should talk about convergence with other programs, because sometimes what happens that programs which are actually focused on some other, you could say, objective, would have some effect, would have some, you could say, like some nexus with some other program too, some other objective too. That is called convergence. And here what we are saying, that it should converge, that is the popularizing pulses should converge with other schemes like Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana, which is a program of Government of India to promote organic farming. Then dedicated programs like National Food Security Mission Pulses, which was once launched by Government of India, similar programs should be brought again. Now, detailing these points, considering the low yield of pulses, compared to the cereals, the pulses have low yield per hectare. The farmer must be incentivized through assured procurement for the public distribution system at a lucrative price, that is the minimum support price. Apart from spreading awareness about their benefits, because that way there would be demand for the pulses, we can leverage schemes. Please make this connection. We can leverage schemes like PKVY, that is the Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana, to identify with healthy food culture like fashionable shift to organic food, as pulses require less agrochemicals. Again, this is an easy connection to make, that the pulses require much less agrochemical use, so they are quite near to organic produce. Actually there are suggestions that pulses would be prime candidates for encouraging organic farming in India. Then dedicated programs like NFSM pulses should be brought. Actually, the NFSM pulse program, it had some objectives like hand holding the farmer. The farmer should be handheld. Undertaking R&D, research and development. For an example, high yield varieties of pulses and etc. Undertaking R&D, scientific approaches, like in approaches, for an example, in integrated pest management. IPM means integrated pest management. So these were some of the objectives of the NFSM Pulse program. So we are suggesting, what we are suggesting here, that a similar program should be brought again to promote pulses. This was all on the benefits of pulses beyond their being source of affordable proteins, beyond their being source of affordable protein, and what should be done to popularize pulses in India. Before we call it a day, we have to make a few suggestions. This you could understand that this present write-up, our discussion has left some important points. For example, we haven't mentioned which parts of India lead in pulse production. So what we are suggesting here as part of your homework, that you should make small notes on, you could say, magnitude of pulse production in India, how much pulse is produced every year in India, which states lead in pulse production, and the status of pulse import in India. This has become an important concern in India, that India has to import, you could say, quite some large amount of pulses. So these have become important concerns in India. You would make small notes detailing these points, noting down these points. We would call it a day here. We reassemble for the next lecture in a few days. As usual, we wish you all the best. Thank you.